Well, my watch says 1300 Eastern time. It's time to start. I want to welcome everyone to this meeting. Good morning, good afternoon, and for our friends in Singapore, we have the detachment in Singapore. It's roughly, 2 a.m.? Hello tomorrow. First off, I'd like to remind everyone to please put their cell phones on silent. And now I would like to call to order the meeting of the National Board of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. Division Chief, Clergy Support, Dr. Philip Poole, would you please give the invocation?
Good afternoon, everyone, and grace and peace be with you this day from God our Father. Psalm 118 informs us that this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. On behalf of the Chaplain of the Coast Guard, Captain Thomas Walcott, and our 73 auxiliary chaplains who make a difference in the lives of our active duty Coast Guard men and women and their families on a daily basis, I humbly am before you this afternoon and offer the invocation. Would you please all bow your heads for the invocation? Our Heavenly Father, as we begin this national board meeting, help us to realize the great promises it holds for all of us. As we engage with colleagues and friends this day, let it be a time to reflect on the goals that have been achieved over the previous year, and a time to look forward to re-examine our roles and commitments in serving and supporting the United States Coast Guard this year. As you look to guide us as the dedicated service as the Coast Guard Auxiliary we are over the past 81 years, we ask now that you continue to guide us today as we make and hear reports, as we reflect on the past year, as we make plans for the future in helping the Coast Guard to be the ready, relevant, and responsive force that our nation requires. And finally, Father, help us to be the best that we can be while always realizing we must remain honest in all that we do. Father, help us to remain dependable, always focused on achieving that which we set out to accomplish. And help us, Father, to look for the many opportunities you will give us to contribute to boating safety and the safety of our nation as we strive to always be ready to serve others. Keep us always in your care, O God, as your grace, mercy, and love endures forever. This we ask in your name this hour. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Commodore Commodore, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag
of the United States of America and to the
to the
republic
republic
for which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty and
liberty
justice for
and
all.
justice for all.
This time, I would ask that you please join me in a moment of silence as each of us, in our own way, remembers the members of the Coast Guard active, reserve, civilian, and auxiliary families standing watch at home and abroad, and also for those that have crossed the bar. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. and Commodore Romano, and Dr. Poole. Thank you especially. Dr. Poole every Monday sends me a personal prayer, and I can't tell you how much it's appreciated, probably how much it's needed. But thank you for that. Terry?
All righty, it is my pleasure to introduce NEXCOM members and flag officers in attendance. I'm going to ask those members to please go ahead and unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please respond with good morning from Singapore, good afternoon from Washington, whatever, just so that your image will show on the screen as you're being introduced. Thank you. National Commodore Alex Molesky.
Live from New York.
Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Carl Schultz.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Admiral Charlie Ray calling. The Commandant's fighting his way through construction. He'll be here any minute now.
All right, very good. Vice National Commodore Gus Formato.
Good afternoon from New Jersey.
Vice Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Charles Ray. Again. Immediate past National Commodore Larry King.
Aloha from Mississippi.
Vice Admiral Scott Bushman, Deputy Commandant of Operations. And possibly he's not on yet. Commodore Gary Barth, Deputy National Commodore, Atlantic Area East and Recreational Boating Safety.
Good afternoon from Sebastian, Florida.
Vice Admiral Stephen Poulin, Lant Area. And he might not be on the line yet either. Not sure. Let's see. Oh, all right. Thank you. Well, let me back up just a little bit. I'd love to introduce the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Carl Schultz.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Thank you. Vice Admiral Stephen Poulin, Lant Area. All righty. Commodore Thomas Mullally, Deputy National Commodore, Atlantic Area West and Mission Support.
Morello from Chicago.
Thank you. Rear Admiral Richard Timmy, Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy. Commodore Linda Merriman, Deputy National Commodore, Information Technology and Planning.
Good morning from Southern Nevada.
Very good. Captain Scott Johnson, Chief Director of the Auxiliary.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, from Fredericksburg, Virginia.
Very good. And Commodore Mary Kirkwood, Deputy National Commodore, Pacific Area and Operations.
Hello from San Francisco Bay Area.
Very good. Also, a very special thank you to the BSX staff, ANACOs, directors, auxiliaries, Coast Guard active duty, and guests joining us today via YouTube. I'll now conduct a roll call of the National Board. National Commodore Alex Molesky.
Present.
Vice National Commodore Gus Formato.
Present.
Immediate past National Commodore Larry King.
Present.
Chief Director Auxiliary Captain Johnson.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area East and Recreational Boating Safety Gary Barth.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area West and Mission Support Thomas Mullally.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Pacific Area and Operations Mary Kirkwood.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Information Technology and Planning Linda Merriman.
Present.
District Chief of Staff, 1st Northern, David McClure.
Present from Cape Cod.
District Commodore, 1st Southern, Mark Stone.
Morning, present.
District Commodore, 5th Northern, Joe Giantasio.
Here.
District Commodore, 5th Southern, Alan Fred.
Present.
District Commodore, D7, Pat McMiniman.
Present, Evans, Georgia.
District Commodore 8 Coastal Region, Patrick Ferry.
Present.
District Commodore 8 Eastern, Matt Meyer.
Present.
District Commodore 8 Western Rivers, Jeff Geddes.
Present.
District Commodore 9 Central, Kathy Slaybaugh.
Present.
District Commodore 9 Eastern, Clark Godshall.
Present from Niagara Falls.
Very good. District Commodore 9 Western, Harvey Randall.
Present.
District Commodore 11 Northern, Dean McFerrin.
Present.
District Commodore 11 Southern, Charles Geiger.
Present.
District Commodore D13, Tiny Singler.
Present.
District Commodore D14, Denise Ankrum. District Commodore D17, Johnny Janik.
Present.
And President, National Association of Commodores, Commodore John Tyson.
Present.
Wonderful.
Commodore Douglas Cream, will you attest to the presence of a quorum?
Good morning, sir, from sunny and warm Buffalo, New York. Yes, sir, you have a quorum present.
Thank you, Doug. Welcome to the National Board meeting for 2021. The theme of this meeting is ready, resourceful, and resilient. I hope that each of you viewing this meeting and attending this meeting today finds it worthwhile. And I want to point out that this is truly an historic meeting for the auxiliary. This is obviously the first time we've had the National Board meeting virtually. And this is proof of our resilience and how resourceful that we are. And the attendance is very important also. In addition to doing this virtually, we are streaming this on YouTube. Last time I checked, we had over 100 people on YouTube. Yesterday afternoon, I know we had over 200. When we did OPCOM, it was over 300. I expect the numbers to go up. Historically, communication has been a challenge for the auxiliary. There were always people, what's those people in National doing? We've changed the way we do business. Yesterday we had people on the meeting from Maine to Singapore. I spoke to Mark Stone, my Commodore, this morning, and he said he spoke to somebody from Singapore that viewed the meeting yesterday. And that definitely shows their dedication, their resilience. It was like 3 a.m. when we were having the meeting. If you're watching today, do me a favor, send me an email. I think you deserve a coin for this one. That's really demonstrates your dedication to the organization. I'm very impressed. But as I said, communication is the key. I'd like to introduce the staff that's making this possible. Patrick Brown and Chris Harshfield are our technology gurus. They're making this happen. Without them, there'd be a lot of string needed because we'd have tomato sauce cans and string instead of this YouTube and Zoom call technology. But this shows how we stepped up. And it's with people like you two that we can get this done. Oh, there we go. Thank you, sir. It's now 225 on YouTube. So the numbers are growing. This was a meeting in the past that if we had 75, 100 people, that was a lot. And it was only those people that could travel to St. Louis or Orlando. So as of now, we probably have over 300 people. It's a big change, a big improvement. And finally, well, I want to mention my executive assistant, Terry Barth. Without Terry, well, she's the best. She does so much and I'd be lost without her. Terry, thank you so much. I know who's the most important person here. I think if I didn't say this, the screen would probably go blank. But in any event, now I have to introduce somebody that's very special to me. I'm the luckiest guy in the room. Actually, I'm the only guy in this room, but I'm the luckiest guy at this meeting because I got to be Vice Commodore to Larry King when he was National Commodore. I'm very lucky in that every time I served in a vice position, I was very fortunate to have my mentor teach me so much. When I was a flotilla commander, it was Diane Ortiz, Vice Division Commander Jim Heinz. I wonder if Jim's on today down in Florida. Vin Peker was my Commodore when I was Chief of Staff. I've learned so much from each and every one of them. And Larry, well, Larry, being his vice was like a master's class in leadership. He was always cool, deliberate, measured, and thoughtful. He always looked out. His guiding principle was to do what was best for the auxiliary. And many of you have been in the vice positions. Always the way I always looked at it was I wanted to learn from the senior person because I wanted to do as well or better. And the thought that always comes to mind when I was serving with Larry was he kept raising the bar. Every time he was faced with a challenge, he just met it head on and beat it. And I was like, that's great, that's wonderful. But after a while, it was like, just level off a little bit. How am I going to live up to this? But then again, his term, it wasn't that dramatic. Let me see, he started and it was a government shutdown. And he finished off with a global pandemic. So he had a few things he had to deal with. But it was my pleasure, it was my honor. And now I introduce Commodore Larry King. Larry? Your turn.
Done an excellent job, and it's not because the things you learn from me are just that good, but I do appreciate those comments. Last March, when I attended the last, I think, official function the auxiliary got to go to, and that was the D train in Newport, Rhode Island of districts 1 north and south. Who knew how bad this was going to become? And who knew that we would be here almost a year later on our computer screens talking to one another all around the country? We had no plan for that. We saw the downside. We saw the bad effects of not being able to step up to the plate to do what auxiliaries are here to do. We couldn't meet, we couldn't travel, we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't be on the water. We saw the RBS statistics getting completely out of hand, and that was very disconcerting. Obviously, we wanted to get on the water, but that was not possible. We could not. The Coast Guard couldn't say, "Okay, you all go out there and do all your stuff." Oh no, we'd end up with a bunch of dead people, and so it was just there was no option whatsoever. Now, we did adjust. The online training, the innovative ideas and plans that people came up with are so commendable. The virtual VSC, attempts at doing public education classes online. Flotilla commanders holding meetings on YouTube and calling and checking up on individual people, which is over and above what they used to do and had to do. That's all great, because we had the very serious concern as the months rolled on, we were going to lose a lot of people. People lose interest. People lost their jobs. They had no money. In some cases, there were people worrying about car payments and mortgage payments and all that sort of thing. So a volunteer organization would perhaps become a secondary thought. We did some selective recruiting to get some people in. You could hear from Dr. Poole how the numbers of chaplains have increased to support the Coast Guard, up to 73. We heard yesterday from Rear Admiral Thomas, who talked a lot about medical support from the auxiliary for the active duty. We're up to 46 people. It started 2 years ago with Dr. Mark Perney volunteering, paying his own way, to get through medical training for the Coast Guard to become a certified flight surgeon. Well, look how we've expanded since then. We have dentists, we have PAs, we have others. Okay, but that's not enough. That was not enough to maintain our numbers. At the end of the calendar year of 2020, we had lost some 500 people in the belly button count. Typically, we don't see that. We don't see that. Every year you do see the sine wave of people who leave the auxiliary for a multitude of reasons, retire, interest, age, whatever it is. We don't see that until the first of the following year. We saw a loss of some 500 people by December. Now, it could have been a lot worse. Thankfully, we had some very dedicated HR folks and others who stayed on the recruiting trail as best they could, and this is so commendable. Having to operate by computer or telephone or carrier pigeon, however they did it, we recruited 1,302 new members in the year 2020, and that is sheer magic. That's wonderful. If it had not been for that, we would have been down nearly 2,000 people. So that's a difficult chore. Think, if you will, how do you convince somebody to join a volunteer organization that's not doing anything? And by the way, you got to pay me money to join. Then you have to go buy uniforms. That's a tough chore. Well, we don't have enough people. We're on a very slow downward trend in numbers. throughout the auxiliary and have been for a few years. Not that many years ago, we had nearly 30,000 people. Well, it continues to drop a little bit each year, a downward spiral. And we're like every other volunteer organization in this country. Some are in extremis. Take a look at the Power Squadron. They are in serious trouble. That's their words. That's their numbers. They don't know what their future holds. Now we're sitting here with near 22,000 people. It doesn't sound like an emergency, but it's going to become a problem one day. Now, of course, we've had a couple of evolutions come along where we got people churned up and made them, start doing war hoops and out the door they go. Let's try mandated training. That was a poor choice of words. Well, we renamed that to core training, but nevertheless, we lost some people, but it's still always a delicate situation in a volunteer organization to get people to stay or to grow the numbers faced with what we do and for no pay. You have to want to do it, and that's good. We all do. So we have a lot of initiatives that are going on that are very important. I just mentioned a couple in the medical world and aux clergy, and I don't put that down at all. I'm very serious about how important that is. It's important to the Coast Guard, therefore it's important to us. We do see a lot of mission creep, if you will. The missions that we are asked to get involved in grow. All right, well, we've asked for that. Look at the gap analysis effort. Tell active duty, tell us where the soft spots are. Let me see if we can't fill those gaps. So we're always on the quest to do that, and that underscores our relevance. Even still, with the numbers that we see each month, we're dwindling. And that's why I suggest, without question, the most important initiative that we've gotten ourselves into in the last couple of years is joining forces with the Sea Scouts. Everything about that is good. Now, frankly, they came to us first. Their leader, elected leader, Charlie Worcester, Vice Admiral, United States Coast Guard, retired, thank you, led this team that came to us and said, we want to join forces. We want something from the auxiliary, but we bring a lot of young people along with us that you may be able to entice to join your organization. They wanted seamanship training. They wanted certainly navigation. They're big time into sailboats, not so much power boats. Well, we can do that. We're looked at as sort of a big brother, big sister outfit in a way. Auxiliaries bring work-life experience to a group of young people like that they can't buy at all. So that was on their end. What we saw in looking at the Sea Scouts is manpower. Now they can join at age 14, but these youngsters, look, if you've never been around a group of Sea Scouts, you're missing something. I mean, it'll restore your faith in American youth. Once again, there's hope after all, that it's not a total lost cause. These young people are bright-eyed, intelligent. They are intellectual sponges. They want to tap our brains for everything. They like to volunteer for everything, and they have a creed of honor and honesty to follow that is so refreshing, and it's good for us. We joined with them to help out with their Sea Scout ships. A Sea Scout ship's kind of like a flotilla to us. They had some in trouble. We have had flotillas join up with those Sea Scout ships to get some back on their feet. In less than 2 years, by the way, out of this cadre of people, we've brought in about 250 new members to the auxiliary. Some are youth and some are their parents. These young people do have siblings at home. They have classmates at school. They have parents younger than the average auxiliarist. So there's the manpower pool. They're a very useful, good people. It's something for the auxiliary, but in time, it's something for the active duty Coast Guard. Assuming we assuming this summer, the whole COVID world settles down enough, we can get back to some degree of normalcy. We have Sea Scouts lined up to go to the academy. We have a couple lined up to go on the academy staff to help with the AIM program, and we have several lined up to go to the academy as AIM students, Academy Introduction Mission. We have Sea Scouts that will be on the Bark Eagle. We have been able to, in spite of dealing with all the COVID problems, we have been able to help them charter 18 new Sea Scout ships around the country in 2020. We have another 25 to 26, was 26 the last number I got, of potential Sea Scout ships that are in the works right now to be chartered. Everything about that is good. You can tell, hopefully, you can tell I'm still very excited about the Sea Scout program. For those of you who are in districts where this is not a strong program yet, I strongly encourage you to get this rolling and moving, and you're going to find out that everything that I just said is true. But it's good for us because it does help in the future. We don't want to continue the downward spiral on the loss of people, and this is an excellent way out of it for us, and it will help the Coast Guard downstream. So there. And with that, unless there's a question or comment, I will give up the rest of my time, which ain't much.
Thank you very much, Commodore King.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Barth.
Hello, thank you. It is a true honor and privilege for me to introduce the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Carl L. Schultz, as well as the Vice Commandant, Charles W. Ray. You may have noticed early on when introductions were made that they're both in the same room, so they're going to tag team their presentation. So what I would like to do is read both bios and then turn the mic over to them. Admiral Schultz assumed the duties as the 26th Commandant of the United States Coast Guard on June 1st, 2018. As Commandant, he oversees all global Coast Guard operations and 41,000 active duty, 6,200 reserve, and 8,500 civilian personnel, as well as the support of 22,000 Coast Guard auxiliary volunteers. He previously served from August 2016 to May 2018 as Commander, Atlantic Area, where he was the operational commander for all Coast Guard missions spanning 5 Coast Guard districts and 40 states. He concurrently served as Director, Department of Homeland Security Joint Task Force East, responsible for achieving the objectives of the Department of Homeland Security Southern Border and Approaches Campaign Plan throughout the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific region, including Central America.
Terry, can you hear me?
I can.
We're going to stop you there. Why don't you give a couple high lines on the Vice and let's get going. We all know each other pretty well here, and I see your auxiliaries falling over and passing out in their chairs here. So why don't you say a couple things for Admiral Ray along a similar toast, and then we'll jump into our conversation.
Short, Terry, short. You know that.
Oh, I know. I want
to know what he was doing in 1981 when he commissioned. What was his first unit here?
Okay, I'll just read the first part. You stop me when you're ready. You always do. Admiral Ray assumed the duties as the 31st Vice Commandant on May 24th, 2018. As the Vice Service Chief and Chief Operating Officer, Admiral Ray executes the Commandant's strategic intent, manages internal organizational governance, and serves as the component acquisition executive.
That's good.
As previous, am I done?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Well, Terry, good to see you, and thanks for the kind words for Charlie and I. You know, I'm going to chat for a little bit, maybe a little bit of overview on where the Coast Guard is. Charlie's got a few things to chat into, then really have some time with you guys. You know, want to thank Commodore Maluski and former Commodore Larry King. It's good to see both on the screen, and Terry, it's good to see your other lesser half, Gary, here, still serving leadership. We go way back with the bars to Florida here, and there's many auxiliaries on today and others that are listening in, and just want to tell you thanks for what you do. We had Alex in a week and a half or so ago for what we call the Leadership Council. Charlie and I bring in the 3 stars, the 4 3-star admirals in the Coast Guard, the Master Chief of the Coast Guard, and the Commodore of the auxiliary. And we talked a little bit about strategic challenges, opportunities, some emerging threats. Alex brought in the new operational uniform for the auxiliaries. Charlie's donning the active duty version of that. But I tell you, I think it looks pretty sharp, and we appreciate working with you, the organization, on coming up a win there. We also talked about the alternative uniform. We know the uniform topic was very sensitive, but to me, looks like we're getting to a direction that I hope will be very satisfying to the auxiliaries that are concerned about the aux uniform, operational uniform, and see exactly what the alternative to that does for folks that maybe don't want to make as much of a financial investment or some size considerations, but I think we're in a good place. I also noted, and I looked at some data provided from aux data 2 now. I'm amazed at our first foray into the, virtual domain here, not the virtual domain, but really big data, other, stuff like that. We are really at round 2 with you guys in aux data. You've been blazing the trail, and that is exciting. We look at the Coast Guard and we think about our auxiliaries, and we think about, approaching a year into this pandemic and a little less than a month here. And, your primary mission, boating safety. I look across the nation, our operational commanders do, and, we've seen an uptick of 10+%, some places north of 15% in search and rescue statistics. And within that, fatalities and boating accidents. And I think that probably directly ties to some of the reduced activities our auxiliaries been able to do on the waterfront, even in boating inspections at facilities. And we're really anxious to see you guys get back there. When you look across the boating industry, the National Marine Manufacturers Association, 12% plus in boat purchases. And I suspect that trend is going to continue going into the next year. So really, what does that portend? More boaters, probably more inexperienced boaters, and unfortunately, more accidents and tragedies. So we need you back on the water, and we need it quickly. And I don't like to cite chapter and verse, but I will refer to enclosure 13 to the aux COVID reconstitution guidelines. And those were recently updated, published on February 8th. And what it talks about, it authorizes auxiliary activities if the regional director of auxiliary office meets certain criteria, and that's a risk versus gain assessment, very important. And we know, that we take that same mindset for every single Coast Guard operation. We weigh risk versus outcome. We use the GAR model, and we make sure we don't put men and women in uniform in harm's way to accomplish something that isn't worth the potential risk of doing that mission. In this COVID environment, a whole lot of different overlays, a whole lot of different considerations, but we need to employ that with the auxiliary as we continue to move forward. It's still an ambiguous environment, but we know you're champing at the bit. My only ask is we work on that in terms of the order issuing authorities. They got some check sites they need to work through. And we look at this first risk versus gain, but we know it's some frustration there. But if we follow this criteria, we're absolutely excited about seeing more of you out there doing frontline missions. What we focused on in this environment, Charlie and I and the Master Chief, is really, a term, I'm not sure we've coined the term, but we sort of use the term a lot, and we've used the practice is decisional agility. And we talked about day 1 of this pandemic is, when the facts, and it's, not always the facts, but when the information changes, some days hourly, we have to have the agility and the flexibility and adaptability to change our thinking, and decisional agility is really minimizing the number of bad decisions you make. And when new information comes in, going back and revisit that and put out new decisions, new guidance, new policy. And we've really tried to empower our frontline leaders, because a national decision here in the headquarters does not portend to a regional solution out in Guam, down in Miami, up in Duluth, up in Alaska. And, I look into the auxiliary, and despite the limitations on things we can do, Alex, Larry talked about auxiliary health services. That's a big deal. We've got 45 aux health service providers right now doing terrific things. We also see some of them getting involved in FEMA and the mass vaccination sites. Just another place where there's an opportunity, and the auxiliary drives in and fills it. I talked to Tom Wolcott, the Coast Guard chaplain, when I first came in the job, when Charlie and I, the new team, came in June of 2018. We talked about auxiliary clergy, auxiliary chaplain. And back at the time, I think we were in the dozens. And I said to Tom, Tom, what's that number look like? He says, I don't have a number in mind. He goes, what the number doesn't look like is bringing one auxiliary chaplain in that isn't cut from the right cloth and isn't focused on our targets. He says, maybe we move north towards a number like 50. We're at 75 right now. And I can tell you, when you look at the mental health stress on our workforce and you look at the spiritual needs of our workforce, we could not be doing what we're doing getting through this current pandemic without the contributions, the auxiliary chaplain program, the auxiliary clergy. So that's a huge thank you for that. And, you know, we haven't stopped operations. When I survey the Coast Guard, I would tell you our pace of operations is actually enhanced. It's on an uptick. We've got men and women from the early days and weeks of the pandemic in places like San Francisco and LA and Galveston and Miami. We removed 250,000 American citizens aboard cruise ships and subsequently upwards to 100,000 crew in the subsequent weeks and months. Many of those passengers on those cruise ships weren't even Americans, didn't start in the United States, and they wouldn't offload them in other Western Hemisphere countries. And we did what America does. We did the right thing, American exceptionalism. We helped people get out of a terrifically challenging situation at sea. Down in Miami, Captain Birdie and her team and the auxiliary is tremendously integrated down there. I had a chance to work with them in my tenure as Sector Commander 0608. They alone removed 150,000 of those passengers. And that was really multi-dimensional chess because CDC guidance and local interests don't always align with the Washington interests. Broward County is different than Palm Beach, which is different than Dade County. And I was really impressed with what they did. When multiple stay-at-home orders came out, we made sure, the Coast Guard made sure that waterfront workers were deemed essential workers, and that enabled the goods of America to still get on the shelves and allow families to go forward. When I think about, you know, the marine transportation system where the auxiliary operates many times in many of your missions, you know, $5.6 trillion annual economic activity, 25% of our entire national GDP on an annual basis. That's a big deal. 31 million American jobs. And that is the lifeblood, the marine transportation system, the MTS, where cargo, fuel, commodities work, and where you really amplify our efforts. Going forward, you know, I just came from Puerto Rico the other day. Had a great visit with the men and women out at Borinquen, had a great visit with the men and women in San Juan here at the sector. And we talked a lot about waterways management. We talked about the increasingly complex threatscape and landscape of increasingly larger ships, you know, more ships north of 14,000 containers, largest in the world, 22,000 making ports. We talked about emerging technologies. We talked about outbound barges on those busy waterways, bringing wind turbines offshore for alternate energy. We're involved in SpaceX and the stand up and stand down of security things. But bottom line, I think there's some opportunities as we look into the auxiliary, even in this waterways management lane. And then we think about maritime security. And President Trump, our former president, from April of 2020 to this day, we're still on an enhanced counter-narcotics pace, enhanced counter-narcotic operations working through Southcom. And we've denied those transnational criminals that have their hand in other nefarious activities, $5.6 billion in illicit proceeds and revenues. And we've taken almost 500 illicit smugglers off the water, feeding the interdiction cycle, the intelligence cycle. And that's a big deal. You know, when you pull that up, why does that matter? It matters when what we see at the border. It matters with people that are fleeing Central America and Mexico for a better life in America. It's the instability, it's the corruption, it's the violence. You know, we all follow the newspapers and the news. You know, Mexico continues to have north of 35,000 homicides on an annual basis. We've got more than 80,000 drug overdoses and drug-induced violence-related deaths in America every year. So that work is very important. And I look north. You know, the secretary, the new administration, the new president and vice president had the privilege of being in the room with all of them in recent weeks. You know, they're interested in the geostrategic, increasingly relevant Arctic. And, you know, the Coast Guard cutter Polar Star, our 44-year young heavy icebreaker, our only heavy icebreaker, is on her way back to Seattle after meeting up with Senator Murkowski in Alaska and getting a little downtime. Not a lot of downtime, and I'll come back to that. But we are an Arctic nation, a legitimate Arctic nation, and we've got our upper game in the region. Polar Star, first time we had a Polar Star polar sea vessel up there in decades, and she pushed north of 72 degrees, 11 minutes north, up in the Chukchi Sea. That's the highest Polar Star has ever been in the Arctic. And some of that is just we haven't been there a long time. It's the changing landscape, the changing environmentals, breaking through 4 feet of ice. But we're proud of those sailors. We're building capacity. We're building a fleet of icebreaker sailors to man the new polar security cutters coming our way. And then I look elsewhere towards the Pacific, but south and west. And we've got 3 new fast response cutters going to Guam. Those are amongst the 43 we've accepted to date. Admiral Poole, and who you'll talk to later this afternoon, 2 of the 43 are going to team up to be the first 2 of 6 we're recapitalizing over in the 5th Fleet in Bahrain, Manama, Bahrain, supporting Navy operations, defense operations on the Arabian Gulf. And that's a critically important region, and none of us, need to be reminded of how sensitive and, difficult Iran has been in that part of the world here, and just upping the game. And we're part of that, and your Coast Guard's there. While I was in San Juan, looking over my shoulder the other day, coming into the cruise ship terminal was the Stone, National Security Cutter number 9, and she just came back from her maiden voyage. She made a drug bust on her way south just south of Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, her first drug bust. And then she was engaged with the Argentinians, the Brazilians, the Guyanese, the Uruguayans, doing what we call illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing. And that's a bad thing on many fronts. It's trashes ecologically sensitive parts of the world. It really threatens sustainment of a critical food source. You think about the planet, 20% of the world's food and protein comes from the ocean. Some nations, 40% of their protein comes from the sea. And countries, the worst bad actors on IUU fishing are the Chinese. They got the largest fishing fleet in the world, and they got fleet sizes 300 strong, 350 strong, operating off the Galapagos, pressing into the Ecuadorian Galapagos Marine Reserve. Stone was working on the East Coast. We also see that fleet, the distant water fleet, pressing in on Argentinian waters and Guyanese waters, etc. So we're excited to see these new platforms pressing in on evolving mission areas. And the Vice and I, we just get to witness what the Coast Guard men and women, including the auxiliary, are doing every day. You're 22,000 numbers, and I know we talk, and Larry talked about declining numbers, and I want to amplify the voice. But as I look into those numbers, and it's hard to take 20 numbers because 20, was about a year of 2 or 3 months of normalcy, and then 10 months of COVID. And this year is, since day one, is completely, mired in the challenges of COVID. But I look at the numbers leading up to 19, while the enrollment was decreasing. I look at the operational hours and why the assets, auxiliary facilities, were decreasing. The productivity by no means was decreasing. And my hat is off to those men and women that are in the auxiliary, that have joined the auxiliary in recent years. You continue to deliver, and you're finding places to be relevant in an environment where that's not so clear, it's more ambiguous, and you're just hitting it out of the park. And I suspect, as we see around the corner here in 2021, with vaccinations, coming forth and being more readily available, not as readily available as we'd like. To this day, we got about 20,500 Coast Guardsmen vaccinated, and we're at a good pace, and then supply chain issues have slowed that down a bit. But I really think we're seeing around the corner, and I really think we're going to see around the corner where our Coast Guard auxiliary is going to get back in, roll up their sleeves, and continue to do and operate at the pace you want to do. So writ large, we in the active side are very appreciative, very honored to be here today. I know Charlie's going to share some words with you on some other important topics, but we need you out there. But we need to stay focused on getting you out there when it's safe. When I look into the entire workforce, that 85,000 strong, when you roll it up, we have truly been blessed. I mean, truly blessed. We lost our first couple Coast Guardsmen here just in the last 2 weeks. It was a 61-year-old Navy veteran who was working down at the industrial facility in Portsmouth. And tragically, that was our first COVID death in our workforce. And we lost a contractor out at the National Maritime Center in Martinsburg, West Virginia in the preceding weeks, also a U.S. veteran from the Navy of comparable age. But, when I roll that up into that number of 85,000 people, boy, there's a degree of luck in there, but I think there's an awful lot of good behavior. There's an awful lot of people making smart personal choices on and off duty. There are leaders making good choices on how you do that in, that enhanced pace of operations, but treating your workforce different. If you're at a boat station where many of your auxiliaries interact, there ain't a lot of day working. There's one crew and the other crew, and they try to keep them apart from each other. So a COVID positive member doesn't take down the whole unit. And I think they've done that remarkably well. So let me stop there. Let me tell you, I look forward to hearing your questions, and I'm going to kick it over to Charlie. And Charlie, you want to share what's on your mind today?
Yes, sir. I'll just quickly, just a couple things, but I want to thank you all for what you do. I mean, we've covered several of the programs that you're involved in, but to me, I just really want to emphasize how much we appreciate the selfless service of our auxiliary. And there was a Coast Guard Aux chaplain who I had occasion to talk to a couple of months ago. We had a station up in Great Lakes that had two tragedies, SAR cases in a row within a period of a week. So young people exposed to very traumatic things. This aux chaplain is a school teacher by daytime and got up at 04:30, made his lesson plan, figured out somebody to relieve him, drove about 100 miles to engage this station, lost a day's pay at school and administered to these young people and then came back. And it's just amazing. I mean, and didn't think anything of it. That's what they do. So I ran into an aux chef the other day when I was at Sector Long Island Sound. Been serving there at Sector Long Island Sound for 19 years through thick and thin. And I just can't tell you how much we appreciate your resilience. I want to echo what the Commandant said. Our number one priority when it comes to our auxiliaries is safety for you. And but I'll tell you, we are learning every day about vaccines, and we are looking at our policies and procedures, and this will be part of our learning and evolution as more and more people get vaccinated. We're not going to stay where we are today. We'll keep looking and factor that in, and we'll certainly include y'all in it. And then finally, I want to tell you, on top of everything you're doing, I heard the Commodore talking about recruiting the auxiliary. I'm going to ask you to help us recruit for the Coast Guard. We are hiring, and I'll tell you, every one of you's got nephews, nieces, grandchildren, people from your church, people from your community. Our target this year at Cape May is 4,000 coasties. We're not going to make that. We need to make 4,000. We're going to probably be close to 1,000 short of that this year because of COVID and how the capacity there at Cape May. I'm telling you, we're hiring. It's a great time to come in the Coast Guard. As the Commandant alluded to, we've got the best resources coming on board with regards to new equipment that young people can operate. We're doing a good job of recapitalizing our computers and equipment associated with that. And we're also, we're kind of getting our toe in this cyber world that so many young people are fascinated by. So good time to be in the service. Whether you enlist, whether you got young people that are in college and they're coming out, we're interested in them too. If they've got skills already and they're just kind of in a, like to look at a change. I talked to a direct commission officer course the other day at New London. We had everything from physician's assistants to engineers to pilots to chemical engineers. So point is, if you don't remember anything else about Charlie Ready today, is the Coast Guard's hiring, and you guys are part of our network. So reach out and do that. I want to finish by how I started, saying thank you very much for your selfless service, and look forward to any questions or comments you have for the Commandant and myself. Thank you.
Terry, are you going to moderate the questions for us here? Is that how it's going to work?
Actually, I was going to, but we're going to have Commodore Formato do that. Pleasure.
All right. We got the Northern Jersey, New York guys leading the auxiliary here a little bit. They're going to be, you don't ask questions, they're going to be breaking elbows and knuckles here, all right?
Don't forget legs.
Good afternoon, Admirals. The first question I have for you is, with activity still restricted in so many auxiliary districts, how may we best continue to support active duty?
Well, I'll mention a couple of things and give charge. I think it's what you're doing. I mean, it's staying in dialogue with your sectors through your normal channels there, and then just letting them know you're there, you're anxious. If I think it's that decisional agility again. What we're trying to weigh. And you think about regionally, we come out of the winter months here, it tends to be the uptick of pace here. I don't know, I can tell you what, February 20th looks like. I don't know what April 20th looks like as we march towards, the seasonal boating season. I'm hoping it looks different in April. I hope it's some more opportunities to get on the waterfront. I think some of your members are getting vaccinated. Charlie's point, he didn't belabor it, was, we are trying not to, stick with the decision we made today that has members locked down. I worry most about the active folks. I don't worry so much about the folks who get home and have a family, get some release away from work and get some normalcy. I worry about those young kids that go home and they can't go to the gym because they have to get an hour a week there in certain locations. They can't do other things. So every day we try to look at, and every week we try to look at, how do we, loosen up some of those restrictions on what we can do and where we can do it and how we can do it. And I think we got to make sure you're talking to our sectors, the sectors are talking to districts. The district commanders are those regionally empowered commanders to use that decisional agility. They're empowered to make choices. I reference, which I don't normally like to do, reference back to, the enclosure that talked about how we're going to do that risk versus gain type decision making. But I think I think I see you getting out there more, but in the interim period, if you can't get out there more, finding there's those places where you can get out there some. You know, like I said, the auxiliary health service has grown up to 45 folks. And I know some frustration as they get into these major vaccine sites. You know, others just want to go and do what auxiliaries do, show up and help. You know, that they're going to do medically related things. Other folks just going to help. They can do that as a civilian in their civilian attire. I can't chase you away from that, but in a uniform attire, we're not sure that risk versus gain there. So I would tell you, Gus, just keep the line of dialogue open. If you see opportunities, Charlie's point about just getting out and talking to folks, you know, even for us and for you, the boating safety education, getting out and talking to folks, that's the biggest thing. But what you're doing virtually, from what I'm hearing the stories about how you're creatively bringing normalcy through, you know, what you normally do through virtual venues, I think that's probably the smartest place to go. Charlie, other thoughts on that?
I think you hit the nail on the head. We got to stay connected with each other. And as Commodore referred to in the beginning of this forum, I think staying connected, keeping people motivated, and those that don't have the particular, you know, background that we're using a lot of right now, whether it's corpsmen or, you know, or healthcare professionals or chaplains or things like that. There's still, I mean, the need for the auxiliary has not subsided. It's just that the safety aspect of where you serve has kind of been, as we all know. But that's changing. We're going to get back. I'd say stay in communication, and it blows me away. I'll tell you, the fluency, the ease with which Terry is masterminding this whole conference here. You got people all over the world, and you guys are knocking it out of the park, staying communicating. Everybody's connected. The backgrounds with the flags and the palm trees. I love it.
I was saying Gus is riding the 210. I don't know how you're doing that, Gus, but we're impressed. Charlie and I are just in a conference room, you know?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think you guys are doing what you're supposed to be doing with regards to staying connected and looking for opportunities. And this, there's light at the end of this tunnel. I really believe that.
Admiral Schultz, you mentioned vaccines and them entering our workforce. While we do have auxiliary members that are over 65 years of age, many have had both doses of the COVID vaccine. Will that have a bearing on the type of activities these auxiliaries may participate in?
You know, Gus, I think if I said anything other than yes, I would be inconsistent with my previous comments. I think we need to look at those on the eaches. You know, when you know, last weekend when I'm home, I think, you know, I traveled this week at Puerto Rico. I think the last thing I was reading sort of Sunday night, Monday when I came in was a couple cases that happened up in Oregon. So there was 2 cases, 2 folks that had the Pfizer and had both doses and were, you know, beyond the 2 weeks when they're supposed to be, you know, safely vaccinated, inoculated, low risk. Same with the Moderna. And they had those 4 people all tested positive for COVID. Then the question becomes, are they carrying sufficient, you know, COVID to be transmitters still or not? I don't know. So what we're trying to do, Gus, is say, let's better understand exactly what a vaccinated Coast Guardsman means, whether that's an auxiliarist, what's an active duty member, a civilian. And if in fact it buys down the risk sufficiently, let's absolutely figure out how we can get back to more normalcy. You know, I think the aux chef program right now, you know, going in and cooking at a Coast Guard unit, it's a high risk activity, but vaccinated crew, vaccinated auxiliarists, you know, we start to understand that, guess what, maybe you can test positive, but really you can't carry enough of the virus to really be transmittable. That might get us to a place where you can return to that kind of activity. So we absolutely want to inform our decision, our risk posture with the best science, but the science changes by the week. You know, we all probably watched on the news in the last 24 hours, you know, now the Pfizer, hey, it's 85% effective with 1 shot out so many months. You know, I struggle as a service chief, Charlie and I, and our chief medical officer, Dana Thomas, who met with you, you know, what's the best approach for the Coast Guard? You know, a couple of short weeks ago, 48 hours ago, hey, you need the 2nd shot. So, you know, I'm trying to not keep changing the facts. We're trying to convince our workforce to take the vaccine. You probably all read, you know, DOD about 33% declination rate across the armed services. Can you get to herd immunity in that model? We're doing better in that. But now we start changing the ground rules, say, no, we're not going to give you the 2nd dose. I'm kind of saying, let's kind of hold fire until we're 100% sure that not giving the 2nd dose makes sense. So, Gus, there's a lot of still ambiguity in here, but we absolutely, as Charlie said, and I'm reaffirming, want to find ways to leverage the additional flexibility vaccination will give us. We're still not quite there understanding. We don't want to jump ahead and then find out a week later that was a bad choice, Coast Guard, because now you got folks, you know, we're putting high risk, maybe by age demographic auxiliaries at risk, or they're introducing risk to our people. we're not quite there, but we're going to get towards that. So I like Charlie. I'm very much encouraged. I think we're seeing around the corner. So I'm hoping the spring, summer, we're doing more things under the yesteryear model than we are here on February 20th.
Thank you for that, Admiral. My next question would be, as active duty missions and demands change, how does the auxiliary best stay relevant?
Well, I think one of the things you can do, and I know you guys have adapted with the online training, is just take all this opportunity that you can to kind of, like we do around here, and we've done it during the winter time, is catch up on the training that you can do, whether it's virtual with other auxiliaries, or whether there's computer based. I know you have some of that. I'd say that's one thing you can do that to help kind of keep your head in the game. I would say also, and there's quite a bit of that. I believe one of the Commodore's areas of emphasis is in the prevention work moving forward. And there's work there that's something. There's a lot of information that a person has to process to hold his or her own in that field. So I think there's probably some learning to be done there. And then, as we've said, multiple times here, I think looking through this COVID guidance that's out there with that recent release, it's only just a week old, and looking through that and really kind of scrubbing it as you communicate with your the flotilla members, communicate with their units they're affiliated with. I mean, once again, it's a risk analysis for everyone in mission sets that you could do. So communication continue, and I would say even look to increase it now that you have some members that are we're looking at other things. And then secondly, continue to train as you have. That's how I'd get after it.
Hey, Gus, and just building on Charlie's point, when you talk about the prevention workforce, I talked waterways management. We're going to be fielding cyber specialists to the districts and the areas, one at each location. This cyber domain, the threat landscape, this MTS I talked about, I got to tell you, that's a big deal for the nation. And, as a regulatory agency, we got to onboard. How do we get after that? And we got CISA in the department, a lot of stakeholders, but I look at your skills bank and your smart folks, your technologically brilliant folks, and we say, how do we maybe bring some of those smart people partnering out? And, Steve Poole and Linda Fagan and their district commanders might welcome some of those folks to team up and start thinking about how we work with the area maritime security committees, the harbor safety committees. And there's a lot of auxiliary, I think, common DNA in there for some of the smart folks. So I think there's some emerging opportunities, exactly like Charlie said, even in this waterway management, expand that up prevention world, and even tie cyber into that, where you might have some unique talents that we don't have those skills. Most of our cyber work activity and center of gravity and focus has been in Washington, D.C. around the .mil domain where our computer infrastructure operates on. But as we start to push out into the regulatory realm, I think there's some opportunities there for the auxiliary.
Admiral, so as we go about our targeted recruiting, obviously cyber is something that we can definitely help with by seeking out people with these specific skill sets. Are there any other skill sets we should keep in mind while we targeted recruit?
I think one of the things that we've been wrestling with, and I was going to try and debrief Dana yesterday after she spoke with y'all. I didn't get a chance to, Admiral Thomas. I think one of the things that we are, if I was going to build out our program with regards to supporting medical care for our folks, I'd start, if there's any capacity in mental health providers within the auxiliary, especially at some of our remote units, and we're getting capability. We just let a contract, which my assumption is that we could avail. It's not like we have to make our auxiliaries travel to, out to the wilds. We've got some ways to communicate, but anybody with behavioral health, mental health capability, we are really, that's something. I was in Kodiak a couple of weeks ago, and I thought we were going to talk about vaccine. I was in the clinic with all the corpsmen around me, and we spent most of our time talking about challenges with mental health support for the troops. And so, I mean, that's kind of just shooting from the hip here, but there's another growth area that I see as well. Over.
Thank you, Admiral. With a record number of named storms this past year, how strained were our resources to adequately respond?
I'll tell you, Gus, it was when it's the most prolific Atlantic Basin hurricane season in the history of the nation here, and you roll that up to 30 storms. I would tell you, we didn't have the Katrina-like storm or the Harvey-like storm, but you know what, the preparation for every one of those, I think there was 5 or 6, Cat 3 or bigger, what we call major hurricanes, as you guys know, because you're creatures of the service and the understanding, but that's unprecedented. Lake Charles got hit twice, within a matter of weeks and, within a matter of miles of each other, and you look down, and not in the United States, but look down into the Central American corridor in that region there, Nicaragua, Honduras, 2 storms in less than a couple of weeks' time. And we're going to see that fuel some of the activity at the U.S. border. It was a unique season in terms of number of storms. I think is that a harbinger of sort of, climatological change? I'm not a forecaster or weatherman, but I'll tell you, I look from 16. We went about a decade after the, the big uptick in 03, 04, 05. We had a lot of storms and Wilma being amongst that, and the Katrina era. Then we had a decade. We had a Coast Guard without a lot of experience. Then 16, we had Matthew, which I think was really a tune-up, bounced up the eastern seaboard after going across Haiti, and really was a good thing. Good thing it didn't really devastate a lot of America, hit weird places like Lumberton, North Carolina off the 95 corridor and killed people there, which you wouldn't expect on an Atlantic-based storm. But it got us ready for 17, 18, 19, and 20. So I would tell you it was a big year. There was a lot of loss. It wasn't the, consume the news with thousands of rescues kind of year for the Coast Guard, but the work that Steve Poulin's team, dealt with every single one, thinking about families, evacuation, reconstituting the ports. There was a lot of that port reconstitution work, the waterways management, the aids and navigation teams, the ants, the cutters, the construction tenders, where they were humping. They were working hard this year. It just didn't have as much of that national attention that I think that the big storms tend to do. You look at what the last 96 hours of these ice storms hit in Texas, it wasn't that kind of a year because the storms were more point attacks in smaller, not major metropolitan areas. But it was a big year. And I think thinking about going forward, auxiliary support to that, we've really lashed up, support to our members when they have dire circumstances through the foundation, mutual assistance. But I think there's maneuver space in there for our auxiliary to be supportive as well. And things like aux chef that come in behind units that get devastated and stuff. There's just a lot of opportunities. So I hope that's responsive to your question, Commodore.
I think you nailed it, Admiral. Thank you. Would you have time for one more question?
We're on your clock. What we don't want to do is displace the rest of your agenda. Charlie and I are here until you're tired of us, or Alex just turns off our electricity.
I don't see Alex doing that. Okay, last question. Would you be able to enlighten us as to the progress of the Polish security cutters, the construction?
I'm going to let Charlie take a crack as the chief acquisition, but as you rock in the seat, it almost has this effect that the 626 behind you is underway right now, Commodore. You should take now. Charlie is the chief acquisition. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes, sir. So we are, as you know, we led a contract with BT Halter as a shipbuilder down in Pascagoula, Mississippi, which Commodore King is very familiar with. And so they've been underway with detailed design. We expect to start cutting steel on that ship this summer. And, the delivery date is notionally late 24. We'll be pressed hard to deliver in late 24. They've got the option to build up to 3. We've got funds for the second one. And so, we are back in the polar shipbuilding business. And so I'm really excited about that. The nation needs us to have that capability, and coaches across the board are excited about this mission. And as you know, there'll be auxiliary spaces there. There always has been. Every time I've gone out to Healy or Polar Star when they're underway, there's been an auxiliary pops up somewhere, whether it's auxiliary chef or other things that we do to support the active duty folks. So some opportunities out there, I think, guys.
Yeah, and Gus, just pulling it above the first ship, and that's a great summary on where we're at. The funding here, the Consolidated Appropriations Act that funded the government, has the money to construct the second Polish security cutter there. So that's exciting. That initial contract's for up to 3 ships. So, the first litmus test here with the new administration and the new Congress seated here, the 117th, is I think there's high interest in the high latitudes. It's a competitive in this great power competition model with Russia and China at the forefront, a place that I think you can spin the Arctic from a security standpoint, an environmental standpoint. It plays to both sides of the aisle, both chambers. So, we've actually tried to broaden the conversation in the recent months and years here about, is 3 polar security cutters really the conversation? It may be 3 plus, maybe upwards of 6. And we're trying to be a Coast Guard that gets back to being Atlantic Arctic Coast Guard as well. You turn the clock back, when Charlie and I started our careers in the early 80s, we had the Glacier and the West Wind and the North Wind and the East Wind, and they were operating in the Atlantic portions of the Arctic. And when you really think about the 8 Arctic nations, Canada, US, Russia got a Pacific stake in the game, but the other legit Arctic nations are really Atlantic based. So I think it's a conversation about the first 3 polar security cutters. We're starting to form requirements for what we might call a medium breaker, maybe the Arctic security cutter, we might call that. And it's really a conversation about maybe 6 to 9 ships total. So as Charlie said, the enthusiasm amongst the junior officers, the junior enlisted about going places and parts of the world to do really exciting stuff. It's like crescendoing. And one last thing as we talk about cutters, as I think about stresses on the workplace, one of those things where we've been most pressed is, those stone sailors, the sailors on the Laguerre 270 out of Portsmouth. They're downrange doing, 45, 75, 90-day patrols, 2-week restricted order of movement beforehand. Some of these cutters have done that multiple times. And when they get in to get, a port call, all it is to get food and gas. They're not stepping off the ship. We maybe authorize a little bit of beer on board that comes out of the lock gun, weapons locker, and they have a little socialization on the flight crew. But those men and women have been operating in a really constrained environment. We're building out thousands of additional sailor billets in the Coast Guard. And to amplify Charlie's point, we're really getting back to our seagoing roots, and we're trying to generate some excitement about sea duty attractiveness. So even the auxiliary, as you talk to young men and women, getting them excited about those platforms, the missions, helping us recruit. I tell you, your voices can be a force multiplier many times over here for us. So unless there's another question, Gus, I'll let Charlie say a couple wrap-up words, and I'll just stop by saying we really appreciate being with you. We know frustration is high in many camps, and our goal is not to restrict you. Our goal is to make sure we employ you safely, smartly, and consistent with sort of the changing environment we're operating in. And Charlie, and just let me stop by saying thanks and kick it over to the Vice.
Just thank you for your selfless service, as evidenced across the board. Wherever we go, there's auxiliaries doing great things throughout this pandemic. So thank you very much.
Admiral Schultz, Admiral Ray.
Thank you, Admirals. Truly appreciate it.
And listen, Gus, the hard questions. Now remember those hard questions you saved. Those are for Bushman and Poulin. They're coming up. The hardest questions for Bushman and Poulin. All right. Thanks for the privilege of being with you all today.
Aye, aye.
Thank you, Admirals.
Thank you, Admirals.
Thank
And
you.
now it's my sincere pleasure to introduce Vice Admiral Scott A. Bushman. Admiral Bushman assumed the duties of the Coast Guard Deputy Commandant for Operations in June 2020. In this capacity, he's responsible for the development of operational strategy, policy, guidance, and resources that address national priorities. This oversight of Coast Guard missions, programs, and services includes intelligence, international affairs, cyber, the maritime transportation system, commercial regulations and inspections, search and rescue, maritime security, law enforcement, defense operations, environmental response, contingency planning, and the operational capabilities of cutter, boat, aviation, shore, and deployable specialized forces. Prior flag officer assignments.
Hey, Terry.
I knew you
Terry,
were coming
I'm gonna pull a Commandant and a Vice Commandant here, and we'll stop there. That's good enough. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Hey, good afternoon. I'm here at the Coast Guard headquarters. I'm about two decks below from where the Commandant and Vice were. It's good to see everyone. Thanks for having me, Commodore Maluski, past Commodore King. It is really great to be here. I've got a tremendous amount of experience with the Coast Guard Auxiliary, all extraordinarily positive experiences. And when I think about the Coast Guard Auxiliary, I think about what a force multiplier they are for really the world's best Coast Guard. And I really, truly, in my heart of hearts, know and believe that we are the world's best Coast Guard. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the reasons for that is I've, spent about 4 decades wearing this uniform and working throughout the federal government, the interagency. I really can't think of another agency that has this active duty workforce of about 40,000, about 8,000 civilians that keep us strong and provide continuity. We have this reserve force of a little more than 6,000 and growing, and then 22,000 auxiliary volunteer force that, as the Vice talked about, the selfless service here. I just can't think of another agency like that. From my perspective, the world's best Coast Guard also has the world's best volunteer force. And that's the way I've always viewed the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary as the world's best volunteer organization. I was asked to speak a little bit today about the Coast Guard's role in the Arctic and the Indo-Pacific. Commandant touched on that a little bit. I might just expand a little bit on his comments about some of our role as a global Coast Guard. You heard him talk today. You've heard him talk maybe in some of his speeches, or as you read as he's being out and about in the press. He talks about us being a global Coast Guard. He talks about the demand for Coast Guard services never been higher. And maybe I'll just talk for a few minutes about what that means from my perspective as a Deputy Commandant for Operations, where I'm responsible to the Commandant device for all the things that Terry mentioned in the bio. So let me just kind of throw a couple statistics out to you. It's per way of a measurement there from 2010 to 2016. China increased the size of their Coast Guard by 73%, Japan by 50%, Vietnam by 73%, Philippines by 100%. So that's really kind of an indicator of how other countries see the value of a Coast Guard. I think in my little bit less than a year I've been here in this job in Washington, D.C., I see that domestically folks are realizing more and more the value of a Coast Guard. My time here at headquarters, it's amazing the amount of issues I've been involved in that have been front and center about part of our national security discussion here and the National Security Council discussions that I've been involved in, the Commandant's been involved in, the Vice Commandants are involved in each and every day. I see it reflected in our operations, and the Commandant went through a lot of different things of, even in a pandemic, the Coast Guard women and men out at sea supporting this presidential counter-narcotics operation where every day a drug-laden vessel was interdicted. So in the middle of a pandemic, we were surging forces. I see it recently near the Galapagos Island at the quest of the country of Ecuador. One of our national security cutters with an unmanned aerial system surveilled a fleet of 350 Chinese fishing vessels. The country of Ecuador is very, very concerned about what they were doing to their waters. Two of our 270-foot cutters, 35 years old, sailed up to Canada, the Arctic Canada, with Canadian, Danish, and Navy forces. Another one sailed over to Greenland, where they work with Canadian, Danish, and French naval forces. Furthest north, a 270-foot cutter, medium endurance cutter, ever sailed. Commandant talked about the Polar Star going in the U.S. Arctic in the winter for the first time in well over 3 decades. One of our 270 foots from Portsmouth sailed to Cabo Verde off the coast of Africa to support a key partner. One of our fast response cutters sailed from Hawaii to the Federated States of Micronesia in the Republic of Marshall Islands, 10,000 miles. A fast response cutter commanded by a lieutenant. National Security Cutter Kimball over to the Pacific Island nations supporting their capabilities in response to illegal, unregulated reported fishing. The Commandant talked a little about that. He talked to us about the Stones deployment, cutter that's not even in commission, doing a drug bust in the Caribbean, then going down to the east coast of South America, supporting some of our key partner nations. And what I really see there is a global impact of the Coast Guard. And that's why the Commandant talks about a global Coast Guard. I see a global impact. I see an outsized impact. Let me get to the Arctic a little bit here. Certainly throughout the world, throughout the country, there's increasing interest in the Arctic. And that's certainly for a whole bunch of reasons. That's because of the human activity, whether it's ecotourism, whether it's impact in the U.S. Arctic to our indigenous populations that live there, whether it's potential for oil drilling, whether it's cruise ships taking a pause due to COVID, but every year we're seeing an increasing number of cruise ships, whether it's the shipping lanes and potential shipping lanes opening up that come out, significant amounts of time of ships having to circumnavigate the world. And essentially in the U.S. Arctic, where there's U.S. waters, the U.S. Coast Guard has responsibility. And as the Commandant alludes to, there's also some security implications there. Russia always has been and will be the largest Arctic state. There is concern by some of the world about their militarization of the Arctic. China is a non-Arctic state. A few years ago, they declared themselves a near-Arctic state. And they have interest, whether it's economically in resources, fish, or other types of resources. There's certainly some military interest and security interests in their parts. And they're interested in kind of rewriting the governance in the Arctic. And that's why our role is such an important role. A leader in the world here is one of the 8 Arctic nations the Commandant referred to. And the Coast Guard is, we are the country's surface presence in the Arctic, whether it's the U.S. Arctic or, as the Commandant talked about, on the eastern side of things, the Atlantic Arctic. On to Indo-PACOM, always had a significant enduring role there, kind of a special role in Indo-PACOM. And we are uniquely suited to assist partner nations, whether it's help them police their waters, whether it's help them protect their fisheries, the things the Commandant talked about, I already talked about in terms of how important it is to their economy. In some of these island countries out there, it's 50% of their economy is tied to their fishery resources, significant part of their protein sources. And we also serve over there to counter to China and some of their activities they are conducting over there. And we're working real hard to continue to be a preferred partner over in the Indo-Pacific. But that does not mean all those different things that we are ignoring domestic responsibilities. By all means, we are totally focused on our domestic responsibilities. Commandant talked about cyber. We have built out our own cyber command. We have built out the cyber protection teams that are fielding out to support the industry, to support our sector commanders. We're focused on our marine inspectors, the critical the work they do to support the marine transportation. As the Commandant talked about, $5.4 trillion of our economy, 25% of our U.S. economy is tied to that, whether it's disasters and the hurricanes. Commandant talked about most significant hurricane season ever. It's interesting, it seems like we've been saying that every year for the past few years. The most significant hurricane season ever, and what our folks did, our women and men did, not only to prepare our ports, to support our families, but to reconstitute those ports and waterways that are so critical, whether it's that specific region or our whole nation, of what comes in and out of those ports and waterways. Or whether that's emerging things that are happening, whether it's commercial space launch, and there's certainly some safety and security interest as it relates to space launch and the maritime environment, offshore energy and the significant impacts that has in navigation, our ability to conduct law enforcement and search and rescue, new LNG facilities getting put in throughout the U.S., and even looking at things like autonomous vessels and what that means from a Coast Guard regulatory standpoint. So we truly are a global Coast Guard while we remain focused on our very significant and important domestic responsibilities. And I think about the role of the Coast Guard Auxiliary and a global Coast Guard. I think about some recent examples of whether it's auxiliary radio operators that provided HF network testing for the Coast Guard Color Star that's on its way back. Again, we talked about that. Furthest north it's ever been in the wintertime in its history for one of our polar cutters. Whether it's some of the AUX support, despite COVID, provided support after Hurricane Laura to help stand an incident command post in Port Arthur. I think the Commandant of the Vice talked about Auxiliary Risk Mark Perney becoming the first auxiliary privileged flight surgeon. I got to tell you, that is a huge deal. That is a huge deal. The Vice talked about the importance of medical support and but providing me another flight surgeon capability in the Coast Guard is a huge deal. And I know that we stood up the first overseas detachment in Singapore. I think I heard they're online at 0200, 0300, whatever in Singapore. And that is certainly part of a global Coast Guard. So going forward here, certainly as Commandant talked about, hopefully we can get you back in the game a little bit more as conditions allow and the safety allows. But I look forward to continue watching the contributions of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. We already talked a little bit about boating safety and the trends in COVID of people buying more boats in the water. With that comes more boating accidents, the ever increasing importance of that mission. But I look forward to working with all of you. I look forward to working with Commodore Maluski and your leadership teams as to identify ways that the Coast Guard auxiliary can best support the many demands on the Coast Guard, both globally and both domestically here with our many domestic responsibilities. Again, as the Commandant, Vice Commandant said, I want to thank you for your selfless service. I really, really mean that. I've gotten to see that up close and personal so many times, the thousands and thousands, sometimes tens of thousands of hours individual auxiliaries devote and their devotion to duty. So thank you for your selfless service. Semper Paratus to all of you. And back to you, Terry, or Commodore. So.
Thank you, Admiral Bushman. Terry. All right. Very good. We will now take a 15-minute break. Please be back in your seats. It's now, of course, my all my clocks disappeared.
14:35.
14:35, so 14:50.
Oh, no, be back at 14:35. It's 14:20 now.
14:20 now. Okay, time flies when you're having fun.
14:21.
Okay, 14:35. All right, see you then.
Thanks.
All right. Well, we got 2 minutes.
You do.
Very good. Pretty much on schedule here, folks. We're doing very well.
Absolutely.
Hey, Terry. Hey, this is Steve Poulin. How you doing?
Hello.
Hey, before we get going here, I'm going to
I
follow
know what you're
suit and
going to
just
say.
abbreviate the bio.
I tell you. Well, yeah, so I won't need oxygen at the end of this meeting.
I'm a fool and Tom Alinsky. Terry and I just had a conversation about this.
Yeah.
We're gonna suggest all our members go to the Coast Guard active duty webpage and enlighten themselves with your distinguished bio.
Absolutely.
This Admiral Timmy, I'm seconding that ask. You can cut my bio to 100 words.
Terry, are you feeling unloved?
I am. It happens every time. I must not do a good job. They don't want me to talk.
You wouldn't believe how much time she spent here at home practicing on this too, out loud.
Did I'm looking at a couple of the cutter names, and I'm like, is that, what was it, a Cushnet or something? I'm like, I'm not sure how to say that. So yeah, I've been practicing.
You
All for
nailed it.
naught.
You nailed it.
Oh, did I? Oh gosh.
He's pretty good on them.
All right, it's 14:35. It's time to get back to work. A couple of housekeeping items. We just noticed, heard from Admiral Poulin. He'd like us to abbreviate his bio, so we'll cut it down from 30 minutes to 15. But no, actually, what we do recommend is we have the senior leaders of the Coast Guard, the senior leaders with very impressive resumes, very impressive, experience. What I recommend is you go to the Coast Guard website, the senior leadership page, and you can read them for yourself, because they're all very humble and they don't want to, hear all their accomplishments. But I think it's important that we're familiar with them. Another issue I mentioned in my early remarks, we were talking about how we have people from Singapore actually listening. And I thought that was very impressive. And here they are, Singapore. I think it's 3 o'clock in the morning in Singapore, and they're taking the time to watch our presentation. And, you know, that's either tremendous dedication or maybe they need a life. But I think it's dedication. And I mentioned I would send them a challenge coin if they emailed me. That was for the people in Singapore, not everybody on this call. The last count I have, there's 275 people on YouTube. You're not all getting a coin, just so we're clear. But at this point, I'd like to reconvene the meeting of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary National Board. Mrs. Barth, will you please read the roll call?
Absolutely. And I do want to make one mention. The questions that have been sent in are appreciated. Please understand with time constraints, we're not going to be able to answer all of them. Any other questions, please message me privately directly to me. Those on YouTube, it will be taken care of by the administrator. I will now call the roll after the break. National Commodore Alex Smoleski.
Present.
Vice National Commodore Gus Formato.
Present.
Immediate Past National Commodore Larry King. Okay. Chief Director of the Auxiliary, Captain Scott Johnson.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area East and Recreational Boating Safety, Gary Barth.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Atlantic Area West Mission Support, Thomas Mullally.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Pacific Area and Operations, Mary Kirkwood.
Present.
Deputy National Commodore Information Technology and Planning, Linda Merriman.
Present.
District Chief of Staff for the District Commodore 1st Northern, David McClure.
Present.
District Commodore 1st Southern, Mark Stone.
Present.
District Commodore 5th Northern, Joe Giantasio.
In attendance.
District Commodore 5th Southern, Alan Fred.
Present.
District Commodore District 7, Pat McMiniman.
Present.
District Commodore 8 Coastal Region, Patrick Fury.
Present.
District Commodore 8 Coastal Region, District Commodore 8 Eastern, Matt Meyer.
Present.
District Commodore 8 Western Rivers, Jeff Geddes.
Present.
District Commodore 9 Central, Kathy Slaybaugh.
Present.
District Commodore 9 Eastern, Clark Godshall.
Present.
District Commodore 9 Western, Harvey Randall.
Present.
District Commodore 11 Northern, Dean McFerrin.
Present.
District Commodore 11 Southern, Charles Geiger.
Present.
District Commodore D13, Tiny Singler.
Present.
District Commodore District 14, Denise Ankrum.
Present.
District Commodore D17, Johnny Janik.
Present.
President, National Association of Commodores, Commodore John Tyson.
Present.
Immediate Past National Commodore Larry King.
Present.
The roll has been called.
Commodore Cream, will you please attest to the presence of a quorum?
We do, sir. Here in sunny Buffalo, there was another quorum and another 8 inches of sunshine on the ground.
Better you than me.
I am very pleased to introduce Vice Admiral Stephen D. Poulin. Vice Admiral Poulin assumed the duties as the Atlantic Area Commander in June 2020. He serves as the operational commander for all Coast Guard missions from the Rocky Mountains to the Arabian Gulf, spanning across 5 Coast Guard districts and 40 states. In addition to his duties in Atlantic Area, he serves as Commander, Coast Guard Defense Force East, which provides Coast Guard mission support to the Department of Defense and combatant commanders. He also has been appointed as Director, Department of Homeland Security Joint Task Force East, responsible for achieving the objectives of the Department of Homeland Security Southern Border and Approaches Campaign Plan, along with coordination and synchronization of cross-component operations and investigations in the joint operating areas. Might I continue or am I done?
No, I think I appreciate it. We'll call it good right there. Hey, everybody, sorry I joined just a little bit late. I am not known for my technological prowess. I was trying to log in through the Coast Guard system, and I had to pivot over to my normal home computer system here. So I joined a little bit late, but I was able to hear Commodore King's remarks. So really also appreciated hearing the Commandant device and also Vice Admiral Bushman. Hey, I'm really excited to be here to just share my thoughts with you as the Atlantic Area Commander. I've had the benefit of working with the auxiliary throughout almost my entire 40-year career. I'm a guy who very junior in my career started off in the boat forces community after my first tour afloat, and got to directly connect with extraordinary auxiliarists. And I'll tell you, what a joy to be able to work again with Commodore King. He and I worked together when I was a sector commander down in Mobile, and then when I was up in D1, to be able to work with both Commodore Maluski and Vice Commodore Formato. So, they trained me well. Let me just say that they trained me well. So I was asked to talk about what's on my mind as the area commander. And I'm going to start with what's always foremost on my mind, and that is how blessed I feel to be the Atlantic Area Commander, because I get to see each and every day the extraordinary talent of our young Coast Guard men and women who are serving selflessly to ensure America remains open for business. They are an inspiration to me daily, and I feel so blessed to be able to lead such an extraordinary group of folks. And of course, I feel so blessed to be able to work so directly with the Coast Guard Auxiliary. You guys are talented, you're valued, you're patriots, one and all. You are selfless servants, and I can't explain how appreciative I am for your commitment to our nation's safety, security, and environmental protection. Look, I wish I could give you all a bag of Bitcoin. I wished I could. You deserve it. But I can't. All I can offer you is my humble thanks for what you do. I'm a firm believer that we are only limited in our imagination by how we employ the auxiliary. We are always thinking about new and different ways to employ the auxiliary. And I think it's a two-way street, right? We have to be very upfront and candid with you about where our needs are. So we have to send that demand signal to you, but there's a corollary to that. And the corollary is, we hope that you will share with us what your talents and interests are and where you see gaps and seams, and that you can help us help you, and that together we help the nation. And I've been involved in auxiliary, like I said, from very early in my career. I remember finally back in the 92 to 94 period, working with Joe Gordon back then, who was the chief counsel of auxiliary, as we were working on the Auxiliary Improvement Act, opening the aperture for how we employ the auxiliary. And I think we've laid a very strong foundation. So, I thought what I would do is first start with my commander's intent as land area. I took over in June, and I wanted to frame what I thought were three key tenets that I expect all of our workforce to align to, whether it's our active duty, our reserves, our civilians, or our auxiliarists. And they're very simple in concept, a little bit more difficult in application, but simple in concept. The first is to be brilliant on the basics. We are going to remain the world's best Coast Guard if we continue to do what we as a Coast Guard enterprise have always done, and that's focusing on our core missions, our core responsibilities, our quals, and our role as maritime professionals. It also goes to our ability to continue to adhere to our operating principles, having a bias for action, on-scene initiative, and clear objective. Those are just basic things, but I think if we're brilliant on those, we're going to continue to be the world's best Coast Guard. The second is to be ever vigilant. Yes, it's semper paratus, but it's also a little bit more about that. It's more than that. It's about being on the balls of our feet, thinking forward, planning forward, and then acting forward. What we do is too important. We always assume some level of operational risk, but we have to be smart about what we do. But in all of that, we have to lean forward and make sure that we are prepared to respond to crisis. I believe that America will continue to judge the Coast Guard by our ability to respond to crisis. We have always responded to crises well. We've responded to crises well because we've had the staunch and committed support of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. The reason why we have been successful as an organization in those crises, whether it's this historic hurricane season that we just talked about, whether it's prior crises, whether it was Deepwater Horizon, is because we had committed Coast Guard auxiliarists who helped support and work hard and helped us achieve success. And I think if we continue to remain ever vigilant, we test our operational assumptions, we think forward, plan forward, and act forward, we're going to continue to be the world's best Coast Guard as well. And the last is being stronger together, making sure that we individually and together treat everyone with respect and dignity. Everybody has a voice, making sure that everybody has opportunity and can achieve their full potential, whether they're auxiliarists, reservists, active duty members, or civilians. So it's very simple, a little bit hard in application, but that's kind of what I'm focused on. But in addition to that, one of the things I did very early on in my tenure is I commissioned a 30-day review, and then we followed that with a risk conference where I brought all the district commanders in, because I wanted to take an azimuth check on where we're at in land area, what are all those issues that we're moving forward, and then catalog those, but then of those, see where land area is uniquely positioned and where land area has unique equities that I can put special emphasis on. So all of those issues that we cataloged were exceptionally important, whether it was SAR, marine inspections, et cetera, those are all important, but there were a certain subset of those areas where the issues were unique to land area. And the Commandant mentioned some of those, as did Vice Admiral Bushman. But let me share those with you. And I call these my operational priorities. The first is to continue to leverage the capabilities of the fast response cutters. We've got these tremendous new assets online. We're starting to roll them out. We've got a full program of record funded. We've got to continue to stretch the legs and leverage that capability. And so the crews are doing a great job. I hope that when COVID eases, we can continue to get auxiliaries out there on those fast response cutters and give you opportunities to see that capability as well. The second is, where are we going with wind energy, right? There are a lot of different wind farms planned throughout the eastern seaboard. We've got to make sure that we're not caught leaning. We've got to sprint to catch up a little bit with industry on this. When I was up in D1, we had the Block Island Wind Farm, so it's something that I'm particularly interested in. But there are issues off the New York Bight, off Virginia, and we just need to make sure that we're positioned to make sure that we ensure safety, security, and environmental protection as that clean energy source is further developed. The next is, how do we position ourselves to handle commercial space? Great for the nation. We are back in space and we are back in manned spaceflight. I just spent some time with SpaceX, Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos's organization. I got to meet with the director of the Kennedy Space Center and got to talk with him about where NASA's going. But you may not imagine it, but we have a big role to play in securing the ranges and in recovering astronauts as they return from space, ensuring safety and security, but also safety of life. So how do we position the Coast Guard for that? It's not a mission that we really contemplated. To the extent that we did, it was, an Apollo era or a space shuttle era. Now we're talking about commercial space operations, and at some point, wholly commercial space operations. So how do we position ourselves for that? You've heard about illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. So I'm focused on that. I'm also focused on how we can position ourselves in the Arctic. And I'm not going to talk much about that because I thought the Commandant and Vice Admiral Bushman spoke very well about our continuity of interest across the Arctic, especially with partners over in the Atlantic Arctic, and what we need to do to continue to strengthen those relationships. And then the last operational priority for me is to make sure that we continue to position ourselves as a unique aspect of the joint force. We fill a gap that is very valuable to the joint military force because we have access and capabilities that no other military service has. I see that play out every day, whether it's what we did in Cabo Verde this summer, what you heard Coast Guard Cutter Stone did off South America. We had cutters going up to the Arctic to do exercises with the Canadians and with the Second Fleet. So that's my intent, and those are the operational priorities. But all our operational missions are going to remain important to us. Let me just highlight the great work that all of our districts are doing. I want to highlight the great work of our auxiliary staffs throughout Land area. They're dedicated to supporting you, dedicated to ensuring that we find ways to better integrate you into our Coast Guard operations. And, you know, they're looking for more and better ways to leverage the tremendous talent and capacity of the Coast Guard Auxiliary. Here's the reality, though. They're going to work you hard. We're committed to working you hard. But here's the other reality. The other reality is the Coast Guard Auxiliary is at its best, I think, when they work hard. I've seen that time and time again. I know you guys want to work. We're going to put you to work. And I know my staff's committed to doing that. You know, don't hesitate to call on our auxiliary staffs out there at the districts because they're committed to doing the best they can for you. And I've given them clear direction that I expect them to be all in on supporting you guys and making sure that together we're successful. And we're doing a great job. You know, I look up in D1 and I see the great work that was done with the Leadership Development Academy, where nearly 200 current and prospective auxiliary leaders were trained. The thing that you did up at Mass Maritime with the Auxiliary University program, tremendous. I think you just swore in 25 students into the Coast Guard Auxiliary, at least that's what I'm told. Incredible stuff. And then you continue to hold virtual training workshops. Same sort of stuff down in D5, really leveraging the auxiliary prevention program and training uninspected vessel and towing vessel inspectors and container inspectors, standing up an emergency management team and refining that. Down in D7, just tremendous commitment on the auxiliary paddlecraft program, health services support, chaplains, recruiting programs, Safe Boating Week. We were able to do that even though it was in a virtual environment. Just a great job there supporting families and active duty units. And D8, all the hard work throughout the hurricane season, supporting COOP, supporting the high sites that went down, supporting the inland rivers, that 12-member team that formed to support a 6-month request from Coast Guard Muskegum to fill transfer and medical gaps. And then, you know, up in D9, doing the risk management refresher course, qualifying their auxiliary paddlecraft program instructor up in the 9th District Eastern Region. And I could go on and on and on, but I want to save some time for questions. I want to turn it over to my command Master Chief Devin Spencer, who's online here. That's just a snapshot of all the great work that's being done. And just my way of saying thank you for everything that you're doing. Keep it up. I look forward to continuing to work with you when COVID eases a little bit. I want to get out there. I want to spend time with you. I want to hear what's on your mind. Commodore Maluski and Commodore Fumato are not bashful. I can attest to that. That's a good thing. And I look forward to hearing from you and how I can better serve you and advocate as the land area commander. So let me just pause there and offer a little bit of time to Master Chief Spencer. Master Chief, you online?
Hey, I'm pulling online, sir. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, good morning to Commodore Maluski, distinguished leaders and true patriots of this great nation. I'll be brief, but it is a privilege to get to spend some time with you all. I got 2 points that kind of came to mind. And one of those points, I'll circle back to when Admiral was talking about our recent visit to Kennedy Space Center. And as you can imagine, very impressive NASA facility. But as you can imagine, it being the Kennedy Space Center, there was this big quote up on the bulkhead. And of course it said, "Ask not for what your country can do for you." And then you all could fill in the rest. I could think of no better group that fulfills the Kennedy challenge right there than you all. So bravo Zulu for living that big patriotic challenge. The second part is, as you heard our Commandant mention, you heard Admiral Poulin mention, the Vice mentioned it, our crews are going through tough times, particularly those that are underway, standing to watch down into the far reaches of the shores that are away from the homeland. And as such, They're not getting port calls, not all the great things that are associated with sea duty, just the sacrifice part. And the families are going through equally as challenging times. So one thing I think when the question came up, what can we do? Some of the times it's just continue to be the inspiration that's a beacon of light that says we will get through these tough times. I can look at every face on here, and I know there's some stories behind these faces. Some of y'all look a little more salty than others. That's a compliment, by the way. But y'all been through tough times. And our young folks, this might be the first real challenge in their life. And just picking up the phone, calling them, checking on them, or just being there saying, hey, you're going to get through this. This is temporary. That's just doing that will be plenty. So thank you all for what you do for Atlantic area. Couldn't be more proud to serve alongside you.
Hey, thanks, Master Chief. Let me just offer 3 quick things because I know I'm eating into some time here. You know, we talked about space operations. You know, I couldn't help but think that the name of the Mars rover that just landed was Perseverance. I'm telling you, I think they should have put a Coast Guard auxiliary label on that thing because that's what you guys are. You persevere. And I want to give a special shout out to 2 auxiliarists. Michael Barth, who's the up in D1, was the auxiliarist of the year. I had a chance to chat with him. Just what an incredible young man and what a tremendous inspiration. And then I want to also give a shout out to Auxiliarist Rutledge down there in North Carolina. You guys are aware that we had a tragic fire down there that displaced a lot of our families. And unfortunately, 1 petty officer's wife and 2 small children were killed in that fire. That petty officer was over in the Pacific. And I'll tell you, Auxiliarist Rutledge provided that compassionate pastoral care to that community and to that family, dedicated over 200 hours providing counseling to the survivors. That is the character of our Coast Guard Auxiliary. So thank you very much. Back over to you.
Admiral, Master Chief, can't thank you enough. Your words are definitely appreciated. I think the more our membership knows about the challenges that you and the Coast Guard face, you know, the better we can serve you, the better we understand our mission, the more we feel part of the team. Thanks again.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy, Rear Admiral Richard Timmy. Admiral Timmy is responsible for the development of national policy, standards, and programs promoting marine safety, security, and environmental stewardship. 3 directorates carry out the mission: inspections and compliance, marine transportation systems, and commercial regulations and standards. Programs include waterways management, navigation and boating safety, ports and facilities, merchant mariner credentialing, vessel documentation, marine casualty investigation, commercial vessel inspections, and port state control. Admiral Timmy, we look forward to your remarks.
Okay, how's the technology work? Am I on?
You are.
Okay, very good. Hey, thanks for the intro and thanks for letting me join you today. Admiral Poulin, if you're still on, thanks for your words for our folks here. Listen, I have the unfortunate honor of following the Commandant of the Coast Guard, the Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard, Vice Admiral Bushman, Vice Admiral Poulin, Master Chief Spencer, and now me. And I found some very eloquent folks who spoke about our Coast Guard writ large and where we're at, and some of the issues that are facing us and how you all are crucial in your contributions. So that's the bad news. My words won't match theirs. The good news is that I'm the one, as the Assistant Commandant for Prevention Policy, that has the auxiliary in my portfolio. And I get to work with all of you as my job every day, and along with Scott Johnson and his staff in boating safety. We're the ones connected to you at the policy end of the organization, and that's an honor. And the other good news is that I don't have to tell you through my own words how much the Coast Guard honors and values your service. I just did it. The Commandant of the Coast Guard, the Vice Commandant of the Coast Guard, Vice Admiral Bushman, Vice Admiral Poulin, our senior leadership is here to honor and value your service and what you do for us every day out there. And I think those actions speak louder than words. Their presence is much appreciated, and I am happy to follow them. So Commodore Maluski and Vice Commodore Formato and Commodore King, greetings, and to the rest of the national and regional staff, thanks for joining us today, for letting us join you today here at the meeting. You know, we're going to talk about resiliency here in the mission in just a second, but I want to talk about you know, resiliency, the internal fortitude of our folks, both on the BSX staff and the leadership of the auxiliary this last year. It's not been easy. You know, you heard us talking about the mental health of our crew as one of those challenges. You know it has not been easy for the auxiliary national staff to deal with the effects of this pandemic, nor has it been easy for ours. I mean, from moving end trains and moving national conventions, losing out on the opportunities to come together personally, the flexibility and resiliency you've shown in that internal focus has been just wonderful to watch and to hear from the folks on how we're overcoming those challenges and still trying to meet mission. But it's the internal workings that I've been impressed with, as much as how we've managed to come up with some ingenious ways to deliver mission to the public. It's the internal, how do we just deal with our own challenges of flotilla meetings, of national meetings, of communications. So thanks for that. And that is not easy. I also want to make sure I give a shout out to the DIROCs around the country. I know from my time in the field, that's such a key touch point from the field back into the policy world, and such a valuable a piece of the organization for us. Then I want to make sure that I thank as we sit here at this national kind of get together. So we talked about resiliency. I've changed my remarks just because, you know, the Commandant, I heard the Commandant talk, I heard the Vice Commandant talk. I just, you know, you don't want to hear the same things. So I'm going to change it up just a little bit and try and, I think, put a spin on it from where I sit for you. So we talked about mission resilience and flexibility, and ingenuity of how we go out there and meet it this year. You heard the Commandant talk about boat sales and this focus on, in this pandemic, you know, boating seemed like a great idea for folks to go out and do. Whether you knew what you were doing or not, let's go buy a boat, let's get on the water. Nobody's bothering us there. We're not social distancing. We can be in our little group. And it became a very attractive get together. I listened to the Federal Advisory Committee, the Boating Safety Federal Advisory Committee, and the quote from one of the states was, "It's the 4th of July every weekend." This is what they were seeing out there. So I say that for a couple, and we talked, I think the Commandant talked about first-time buyers. But there's some stats on first-time buyers being a large part of who's buying these boats. This is all me building up to a discussion about risk. Let's talk about risk in the system. You know, normally the prevention director, you heard in the intro, you know, I've got 3 people working MTS, and I've got the inspectors. We do all of this on a basis designed to drive risk out of the system writ large. We create a standard, we enforce that standard, and we have a feedback mechanism on how we did, you know, whether it's how to train people, how to construct boats, how to inspect boats. There's a standard, we comply with it, we have a feedback mechanism on how we did with it. And that's kind of an incremental approach to risk management in the system at large. Last March, we threw that playbook out because the risk was not that we wouldn't train a mariner right. The risk was that we would lose the entire marine transportation system to a pandemic by sick mariners, no one to run the boats, no one to run the ports, inspectors who would go out and get infected talking to mariners, or vice versa. So we had to kind of flip the script on how we were addressing risk in the system. And we did that really rapidly with a change in public policies, how we were going to conduct inspections, when we would conduct inspections, who would be required to renew their licenses and when. Because remember, a mariner's credential, I got to go in and test at a third-party facility. I got to go to a doctor and get my doctor's note that said I'm still healthy. Nobody wants to do these community-based interactions in a community that's shut down. So we had to be realistic in how we approach risk. And we've done that over our last year. And you all have had to deal with that as well. I mean, that is just the long and short of it, is that community risk that drove us out of face-to-face inspections has taken you out of meetings together, you out of boat dealer visits, out of dockside visits. So we talk about risk. Where is this risk going? if we're not using our normal risk approach to drive it out of the system, it's building up somewhere, right? It's the old squeeze the balloon. If I squeeze here, something's gonna come out on the other end, and I'm gonna have to play whack-a-mole as I chase latent risk in the system. So moving forward, that's kind of one of my big concerns. As I look at these stats, as I look at who's buying boats, what the numbers look like for us, for people who are getting trained, and really, unfortunately, the almost 30% projected rise in fatalities from boating casualties. Risk is building up in the system, and as we come out of this pandemic and return to normal, it will, for me, really be working the staffs, working with all of you to drive out that aggregate risk to the maritime public back out of the system in the best way, whether through the prevention policy decisions we make at headquarters, whether it's Admiral Poulin and his operational approach to driving risk out of the system, and then, of course, through the use of our auxiliary. One of the, again, love the ingenuity, the resilience of the team as you looked out there and you said, how do you continue to meet mission? So you're getting after some of that risk and coming up with the approaches to the states, not almost all of them, with NASBLA as well, to get there for a virtual presentation of course material. Education is the key to driving this risk out, and many really fundamentally driving the risk out of boating risks in recreational boating. And you found a way to do that. And that's been a great boon to at least getting to that piece of the risk. There was a comment early on, I forget who it was, our facilitator, who asked about, hey, ask the Commandant, how do we stay relevant? What's moving forward? What's one of the best ways for us to stay relevant? And so I started taking notes. I listened to the Commandant's answer, and I've been kind of turning this question over my head about relevancy. And I think there's a couple different comments that I would pile on top of the Commandant's good answer. One was, and I think eventually part of the answer was about technology. Look, technology is outpacing all of us. And everybody needs to, and you guys have done great. I've loved watching your teams work with with Aux Data and the other cyber issues, but that continues to be the relevancy piece that we need as a workforce, whether on the active duty side, the auxiliary side, the reserve side. It's the mastering of that technology and what it can do for us. That is a force multiplier for us. So there's a place to focus in all we do. Another comment came up about the named storms, right? 25 named storms, 8 storms in the Gulf. Yeah, you better believe that emergency management, OEM, Office of Emergency Management here at Coast Guard headquarters now, in the field, that response set of skills, that expeditionary willingness of the auxiliary to deploy is a way to stay relevant for us. I mean, it's what we expect of our reserves, our active duty, and as Admiral Poulin mentioned, down at Deepwater Horizon, I had the honor of being with him there for a few months in Mobile during that response. That is going to be part and parcel of who we are as an organization moving forward. And you want to be relevant, it becomes that ICS skill set, that willingness to be expeditionary in the mission set we do. It doesn't look like it's going away. And we did ask the aux team to be part of that public affairs team that actually advertised our rebranding to the Office of Emergency Management. I think it used to be Contingency Planning and Management. Now, OEM, that's a great rebranding effort. You're part of that for us, and it will be a way we all are relevant. And as Admiral Poulin mentioned, that's where we stay operationally connected and relevant to delivering in meeting the public's expectation of us, right? That's who we are. We're the crisis responders. Last thing, I'll put 2 pitches as I come to my end of my time. Relevancy will mean diversity of who makes up our ranks. We continue as you recruit and you'll look for folks who are going to be part of the team. We need a diverse set of Americans across this country who part of the organization, active duty, reserve, auxiliary, civilian. So that's a big piece of it. And lastly, it's not, it's focused on the fundamentals to me. We talked about a lot of other ways to contribute, from aux chef to chaplain to interpreter to marine safety. But that boating safety piece for me, moving out of a pandemic, looking at those numbers, where has risk built up in the system? Fundamentals matter, relevancy exists right in that boating safety mission to keeping Americans from dying in these next few years as we drive that risk back out of the system. With that, I know I'm at time. Wonderful to see everybody again. Looking forward to doing it in person next time. I will open it up for questions or however you want to do from a facilitating point. But thanks again for the opportunity to join you.
Thank you so much, Admiral. We appreciate your time today. Great remarks, great remarks. At this point in the agenda, we're going to deal with some business that we have to take care of. Each member of the board has received a copy of the minutes of the board meeting from our national board meeting on January 24th, 2020. Time flies, in St. Louis, Missouri. At this time, I'd like a motion to waive the reading of those minutes. Please unmute yourself if you'd like to make that motion.
I was so moved.
Gary Barth makes the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Levin North.
Levin Moore. Dean McFerrin makes the second. The motion to waive the reading of the minutes for our national board meeting on January 24th, 2020 is made and seconded. Is there a discussion on the motion? Hearing none. There being no request for discussion, so those against the motion, please don't bother to unmute yourself. Hearing none. The motion to waive the reading of the minutes is approved. Next item on the agenda is I'm going to request a motion to adopt the minutes from the national board meeting on January 24th, 2020.
Motion to adopt. You
Yeah,
want
Mark-
second?
Mark Stone makes the motion and Alan
Archangel second.
makes the second. The motion to adopt the minutes of the national board meeting has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? There being no discussion sought, those against the motion, please unmute yourself and say nay. Mrs. Barth, are there any nay votes?
No nay votes.
The motion to adopt the minutes of the national board meeting from our national meeting has been passed. Is there any old business to be brought before the national board? Hearing none. Is there any new business to be brought before the national board? Hearing none. Are there any recommendations to be brought before the national board?
There are no recommendations for consideration during this national board meeting.
Thank you, Commodore Famada. At this time, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank and recognize the Dyroxis staff that will soon be retiring. We all know there's a lot of good Dyroxis. There are some great ones. Now, the individuals retiring, it's Commander Benjamin Morgan from D9 and Commander John W. Briggs from D7. I checked. They're some of the great ones. Dyroxis are extremely important on our organization because essentially they're the contact for active duty that the vast majority of our members have. So their job is critical. And these two individuals, you know, from my investigation, they were among the best. So I want to thank them for everything they've done and wish them, you know, fair winds and following seas. And I'd like to know when I could expect their auxiliary application. I expect that to come shortly. Also like to talk about, I forgot Bosun Robert Zamora for the D9 OTO. And we all know how important the OTOs are to the organization, especially those that are operational. They make a difference. I've met the bosun and great guy and was sorry to see him go also. Now we get to the BSX staff. Now, most members don't deal with BSX, but when you're in the national board, especially in NEXCOM, you deal with them on a regular basis. And they're very special people. This year, Master Chief Dennis O'Connell is retiring December 21st, and we're going to miss him. we're definitely going to miss him. His expertise in all areas operational is without par, and he developed an expertise in Orcs data too. Without the Master Chief, we'd have some serious challenges between the Master Chief, Sue Davies, Amanda Constant, Linda Merriman. They were the team that pushed this new system through, and we're going to miss the Master Chief. But I think he's going to enjoy his time up in the Cape, in that part of the world, and I hope he's on today. If you're on, Master, I wish you the best, and hope to see you soon.
Hey, thanks, Commodore. I appreciate it.
Oh, good to see you. That's great. Oh, very good. Oh. All right, we're going to miss you. I hope we won't miss you long. So if there's a will, I'd be very happy.
I suspect we'll be seeing each other.
Very good. I'm happy about that.
Thanks, Commodore.
Thank you. Last but not least, I want to recognize Captain Johnson. Captain Johnson, who was retiring at the end of this year, he's going to be leaving his position as Chief Director, I believe, in June. And this is something I'm not happy about at all. We've all experienced this in the auxiliary, how Coast Guard officers, they come in, they learn the job, you become close, they do a tremendous job, and they leave. I've had issues with this from day one. I come from a different world. I'm sitting behind the same desk for 34 years now. That's not how the Coast Guard works. I've come to understand that. I see the advantages and disadvantages. This is a disadvantage. I'm going to miss Captain Johnson, and I know a lot of other people will. And aside from his leadership ability and skills, his management and organizational skills, there's something that trumps all of that. He cares. He cares about the auxiliary. He cares about us. He wants to do the right thing. I've met his successor, his replacement, Captain Troy Glendy, virtually so far. He's a pilot, so he can't be a bad guy. So that's a good thing. But we're definitely going to miss the captain. And I know we've discussed this repeatedly. And the captain will be leaving this position in June, but we're pulling all the strings we can to make sure that he's in Orlando in August. But we're going to miss you. We're going to miss you. So, and thank you for everything. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Perry?
Though very sad, it's a true honor and privilege for me to introduce to you for the last time Captain Scott Johnson. And Captain Johnson, would you please permit me to read your entire bio? Captain Johnson.
You must. Go ahead.
Thank you. Captain Johnson is the Chief of the Coast Guard Office of Auxiliary and Boating Safety, where he serves as the Chief Director of the Coast Guard Auxiliary, as well as the National Coordinator for the National Recreational Boating Safety Program. His previous assignment was a Division Chief in the Coast Guard's Office of Design and Engineering Standards, where he led the development of U.S. national maritime safety and environmental protection regulations and policies for complex shipping, oil, and gas projects. Additional assignments include Chief of Prevention at Coast Guard Sector Anchorage, Division Chief at the Marine Safety Center, and Executive Officer, then Commanding Officer at Marine Safety Unit, Baton Rouge, Marine Safety Office, New Orleans, and Coast Guard Cutter Alert. Captain Johnson is a 1994 graduate of Norwich University, where he earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering. He also graduated from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, California in 2006 with a Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering. Captain Johnson is a native of Covington, Louisiana. He and his wife Tamara live on a farm in Fredericksburg, Virginia with their 5 children, Madison, who is a nursing student at Liberty University, Nolan, who is a cadet at the Coast Guard Academy, Benjamin, Tegan, and Callahan. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Perry. Thank you. If you please allow me a proud father moment here. The last part of that of that bio is what I'm most proud of, my family. That's where I find my identity, and that's what matters most to me. But one update to that, and this makes me very proud, is now Benjamin, the third kid there, is on Air Force scholarship at Syracuse University, majoring in computer engineering. So the proud father in me is just seeing the continued patriotism and service in my own children. The same thing that has you right here on this call today. So thank you, Terry. Commodore Molesky, thank you for those very kind words. I got to tell you, I will be at NACON. God willing, we have it in person. I will be there, and I'll get to say my goodbyes there. I just want to start out and thank the admirals who participated today. I believe Admiral Pullen is still on, Admiral Timmy, Master Chief Spencer. Thank you for all the kind words. I greatly appreciate it on behalf of the auxiliary. I know they greatly appreciate it too. For the auxiliary overall, I'm amazed. We had 21 stars in 2 days come address you. If you count up the stars, I think I counted 21 there. I have never seen so many stars come and address one community. It's impressive. And I think that speaks volumes to the value you bring to the Coast Guard. And they said it more eloquently than me, but you are providing value even in times like this. So I'm on a schedule right now for 20 minutes, but I'm going to promise you, I know we're running over. I'm not going to take all 20 minutes here. I spoke from the heart yesterday in the committee of the whole meeting, and I delivered a message on grace and understanding in these tough times. And I would love to repeat that again today, but I won't. But if you missed that message, I encourage you to go watch it on YouTube at the link there. But today, I just want to take a couple minutes and talk to the future here and what's going to happen in the Chief DIROC's office and BSX, and give you a few lines of effort of what's going on. So for me, I'll tell you, I'm a bit optimistic right now that one, we will have NACON in person. And as the Commodore Molesky said, it will be epic. Two, I hope by that time we will be operating as we once were before. I'm optimistic as we recover from COVID, there are vaccinations. I think you're going to see increased operations and getting back into the swing of things. So I'm optimistic. But with that optimism, as you all know, and this has been mentioned, there's going to be a few challenges for us coming off of not being in operation pretty much for a year. To getting back in the air, getting back on the water, getting back in the classrooms. We have issues, as Commodore Molesky said, with requalifying people, those types of things. And that's going to be a big slug and a big workload for us moving forward. Right now is the time to think about that. We're thinking about it up at the national level. But I also encourage you to think about it too, and I'm talking to you DIROCs, you OTOs, you DCOs who need to be talking to your district staff. Think about this and how we're going to recover. For you DIROCs and OTOs, I encourage you to start to think active duty for QEs, probably some active duty support to help the auxiliary get back online. We'll be doing the same up at headquarters too and thinking about those things. So just a few lines of effort in the Chief DIROC's office that we're working on. Of course, you've heard a lot over the past 2 days about AUX Data 2.0. That continues to be a huge effort in BSX. And beyond just bringing it online and refining it, we're also looking at expanding it and bringing essentially the auxiliary into the 21st century. So what I mean by expanding it is there are other systems outside of AUX Data that operate independently. One is we know AAMS. That's the database that got hacked by, as Admiral Darmanilian said, a criminal came and hacked the auxiliary database and placed ransomware on it. We're going to take that and bring it under the auxiliary aux data umbrella. The ALAC card system is another system we're going to bring under that umbrella too. So we're going to continue to expand that system. You've heard a few times about uniforms and the CGU and the new AWU, which is the auxiliary work uniform. We're continuing to work, gold and silver side team, to develop those uniforms, come up with the lines of effort. There's going to be a pilot program in D1, in D8, starting up this summer. What comes with that is a lot of policy that we have to develop, SOPs and such. So more to come on that, and we'll have that going this summer. Continuing to, another line of effort is continuing to update what we need to from mishap recommendations from the past. We still have to implement some recommendations. One of the things that is likely to happen is for surface operations, new physical standards to be able to be boat crew or coxswain, implementing physical standards, and maybe even looking at changing up some of the quals to optimize it, looking at the day-night qual part of that. And by the way, let me back up. When I say physical standards, I don't mean pull-ups, push-ups, run 2 miles. It will be more practical physical standards. So I don't want to scare you out of the auxiliary with that. So there's a practical measure. Again, that is a silver side and a gold side team effort right now, being led by Master Chief. Another line of effort we're working on is admission of lawfully admitted alien residents into the auxiliary, providing a path for those folks, developing a policy for that. And of course, we're moving into the 21st century with C schools, and you should see really soon some virtual C schools coming online. There's so much more going on up at BSX. That's just a handful of things, and those are the more high priority things. I know there's people out there that are saying, well, wait, what about, aviation and some of the other things? And I got to tell you, if you're probably thinking about it right now, it's on our list. Our list is just very long. So we're getting to those things. And if there's success that we could achieve very quickly, we will do it. But we work with NextCon. I work with the National Commodore to prioritize the efforts we can push through and get to success on. And we're accounting for everything that's out there. I'll say, I wish I could work and knock out all those things at once. All the updates to the manuals that need to happen, all the changes to PPE and such. We're working on it. I wish I could just knock it out all at once, but we only have a handful of folks, as you know, in BSX to do it. So just a couple announcements. Again, to reiterate, Master Chief Dennis O'Connell is retiring, as Commodore Molesky said. I got to tell you, Master Chief is the real deal. Not only, as Commodore Molesky had told you, he pretty much brought aux data 2.0 online with the help of Commodore Merriman and her folks, but also he is a one-person show for the operation of the entire Coast Guard Auxiliary. All 22,000 relies on one person, and that's Master Chief O'Connell. So he's balancing a lot of responsibility there, and he's done an amazing job. And I got to tell you, Master Chief, I'm going to miss you as well as the auxiliary. You've done some amazing things. Also, Commodore had mentioned Captain Select Troy Glendie coming on board. Here, that date has been pushed back now to June 1st. He will be taking over as the chief director. I don't think we'd have a better person to be able to do it. He's an amazing person, highly respected in the aviation community, highly qualified in the aviation community. And he's really looking forward to coming on board. I think you're going to really enjoy his leadership and working with him. So, and as for me, as Commodore Molesky said, I'll be retiring, but I won't retire until the end of the year. So there will be some time, and I will be on board in August when we have NACON. So just in wrap up, I want to mention what I said yesterday, that we're stronger as a team as we move through these tough times. Let's continue to work together with grace and understanding to get through it, to get us back online and get us on the backside of this pandemic. I promise you, we're going to be a stronger auxiliary if we stick to those core values. Again, I'm proud to be your chief director, and I look forward to seeing you in August. Thank you.
Captain, it's been an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure. Going to miss you. Thank you.
It is now my pleasure to introduce the National Commodore of the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary, Commodore Alex Molesky, for his closing comments, and there will be no bio.
And no bio. Thank you very much. It's classified. God help us. At least they don't put the pictures up with the numbers along the bottom. That would be embarrassing. For me, the auxiliary, a lot of it's about opportunity. And today was a tremendous opportunity, especially for the general membership. I'm looking at my messages here. We've had 707 total views on the YouTube. That's over 700 more people that have seen and taken part in this meeting than ever before. That's amazing. And I think Captain Johnson said it best. I didn't stop to count the stars, but 21 stars. 21 stars took part in our meeting. If that doesn't prove to everyone in the auxiliary how important the auxiliary is to the Coast Guard, I don't know what more can we do. 21 stars, the Commandant, the Vice Commandant, the senior leadership of the Coast Guard took time to talk to you. Not only did they talk to you, what I thought was very important is something that at the senior levels of NEXCOM we get to see, the breadth and the expanse and the scope of what the Coast Guard does. The Coast Guard is on all 7 continents, and I think you got an idea today of the challenges that they face, whether it be Bahrain, the Eastern Arctic, the Western Arctic, the Southwest Pacific, commercial spacecraft operations off the coast of Florida. The list goes on. You heard the list today, and we're part of that team. We are an important part of that team, and a lot of those missions can't get done without what you do every day. Obviously, we've been facing our challenges. COVID, knocked everybody for a loop, but you demonstrated our core values. You demonstrated that we are resourceful and resilient, and that we are ready, and we will continue to be. I have to take a moment. I've thanked a lot of people, but thank the staff. I have to thank NEXCOM. I said before that I was the luckiest guy in the room. Well, I'm the luckiest guy in the auxiliary because I have a tremendous team. NEXCOM, the folks on NEXCOM, my Vice Gus, who could ask for somebody better than Gus? The 4D NACOs, Commodore Cream, amazing. People always ask me, you must be so busy, there must be so much to do. It's a pleasure getting up and doing this every day. It really is. The team is so helpful. I'm more than impressed. I'm inspired by the people that I have the privilege of working with. I'm inspired by the fact that I'm part of an organization where you all are members. So you heard enough from me. So let's get on with the rest of this so we can get back to our other lives. Mrs. Barth, are there any announcements?
Well, everyone get your calendars out. NACON 2021 is just around the corner. The dates are August 19th through the 22nd at the Rosen Center in Orlando, Florida. Fingers crossed. We hope to be able to see everyone there in person. And that's all I have.
It's going to be epic.
And it'll be epic.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting of the National Board.
So moved.
So move.
Move.
Second.
Second.
And second is, who's second?
Second.
Second, Gary Barth. Very good. Those against the motion, please unmute yourself and say nay.
Nay.
It had to be a lawyer, you know?
He doesn't get a vote.
The nays leave. The meeting is adjourned. Good night, good day all. Good afternoon. Good night. Thanks so much.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody,
Night,
for attending.
everybody.
And just a reminder for Commodore Formato and Commodore Molesky to stay on the line.